Now let's take a look at speech to text. Remember, we just did text to speech. We're going to do the exact opposite and record our voice and then transcribe it using OpenAI's Whisper endpoint. Let's look at their docs though. If we come over here, we're on speech to text. You can read through, research a bit about the Whisper model itself, but essentially it just transcribes audio, and that's all it really does. Now, the tricky part is getting our audio from our computer when we speak it into our Bubble application and sending it here as an MP3 file. Luckily, we'll have some plugins to help us along the way though, so it won't be too difficult. Of course, what is the first thing we're gonna do? Well, it's copy our curl command. Let's come over here, copy that curl command. You can see it's gonna take some sort of file path. In our case, it's gonna be an audio file or MP3, and then you're just passing it that Whisper model. So that's really all there is to it. Let's come back to our Bubble app. Let's go ahead and make a new page. So instead of TTS, we'll do STT, speech to text, and we'll go ahead and create. Now let's go set up our plugin. So we'll come to plugin, we'll expand our OpenAI plugin. Remember, we made these shared headers, and we have all of our endpoints here. So let's go ahead and import our curl command and add another endpoint. So we have that. It automatically populates the data. Of course, we want to rename this. So instead of curl call, we'll do speech to text, and then we'll add it as an action. We can go ahead and leave this as JSON. It'll be a post. Now we can get rid of our authorization here, but keep content type as it is a little bit different than our shared header. This is a multi-part form data, so just keep that in mind. For JSON here in the body, we're actually going to be sending form data, so you won't have a JSON body. You're actually just going to have parameters, one being the MP3 file, and then one being the Whisper model itself. So we're going to add 2 parameters here, and to get these keys, we need to go back to our curl command and look at what they are. You can see here we have 2 keys, file and model. You can see model was going to equal Whisper 1, and then our file is going to equal some sort of MP3 audio or file path. Now, we're not using this in a local code repo, so we don't have local paths. We're going to have either URLs or MP3 files. So let's go back to our plugin, and we'll enter our keys. So we have our file, we have our model. Model is going to be Whisper, TAC1. Let's go make sure that's correct. Yep, Whisper TAC1, and then the file is going to be a MP3 file. So make sure you uncheck private for the file, and we're going to actually select send file. Now it's going to automatically populate to upload, and that just means that we can click it and upload a file here instead of some sort of text. So let's go get an MP3 file. Now, you can obviously make your own MP3 file. I'm just going to come over to this random website, Gettysburg Address Audio. We're going to go ahead and download this MP3 and go back over to Bubble, and that is what we're going to upload. So I'm wondering if I can actually just drag it down and it will work. Yep, you can just drag it down and it should populate in the value. So we're good to go there. We should be able to initialize this call now, and well, hopefully it works and transcribes that audio. Again, that's going to be the only thing that gets returned here is just the audio text. So we go ahead and initialize the call. It's going to say invalid file format. Of course it is. Let's see what went wrong. So if you take a look, you can see here that this is a zip file, not an MP3. I didn't even pay attention or look at it. So you want to get rid of that, and you want to make sure that you're actually uploading a .mp3 file. So I'll come to my files, and I'll drag over the MP3 file itself, and then we should be good to go. So we'll connect again, wait for it to initialize, and then we get the raw text from that audio file. So super, super cool that we're able to do this. Again, there's so many use cases that you could be using this for. I mean, just think about Siri and what it does. That is basically what we're going to be able to do here. So we have this text, and we can save that. So we have our API set up. We're going to be able to use this endpoint now. The next thing we need to do is actually add another plugin so this will work. So if we come to add plugins, just go ahead and type in audio recorder. And let's go ahead and select the second one down. So we have audio recorder, this light blue color. We'll click done. And this is going to give us some events and actions to do in our workflow. And I'll show you what I mean here in just a second. But let's set up a basic front end. Of course, we're going to drag our group on. That is the first thing we always do. Now inside, we're going to put our audio recorder, and it's just going to be a little box that sits at the top left. And if you want to hide this, you can just make it super small because you don't really need to be showing this. we're going to actually use an icon instead that a user can click on and activate the workflow. Just looks a lot cleaner, a lot prettier. So I would just use an icon instead of this little audio recorder that you can't change or really do anything with. So just make it really small and we'll add our own icon. And let's give this a align or fixed so we can just freely move stuff around. Great. So let's make it an icon that actually is some sort of a microphone. So let's type in microphone. Great, it has one for us. That's really all we need. We just need this microphone and then a place to put the text. So to do that, of course, we'll drag over a text box so we can display everything. But what's going to happen here is a user is going to click on the microphone, it's going to record, then when they click it again, it will stop recording, and then we'll perform the workflow functions or actions and display the response from OpenAI here. Now, to do that, of course, we're going to need a state variable. In this case, we're not going to be saving it to our database. We're going to be just saving it to a state variable and displaying it that way. So let's come up to our group. Let's make a state variable, and we'll just do response. The state type will be text. We can go ahead and create. Now we have access to that, and we're just going to be displaying it in our text box. So like we've done a dozen times before, we just come over and select our group A and its response. Great, so now our response will display there once we change that state variable. So the next thing we need to do is actually click on the microphone and add a workflow. Now there's a couple things to think about when you're doing this. And there's probably, again, a dozen ways to do this, but we're just gonna do it this way. We're gonna perform actions based on the state variable. So if the state variable of the microphone is recording, and it's already pre-built for us with this plugin, if it is recording, we will stop it from recording. And if it is not recording, we're gonna activate it to record. So how do we do that? Let's come over here to our actions, and we're actually going to go up to when it's clicked at the workflow level itself and give it a conditional. Now the conditional we're going to find is audio recorder A, and then say its recording status is yes. So if the audio recording status is yes, then we actually want to stop it from recording. We can do that if we come to element actions. You now see this tab of audio recorder, and we just want to stop the audio recorder. Now, the next thing we want to do is the exact reverse. If it is not recording, then we want to start it. So we can start and stop based on its recording status. Let's do that very same thing. So we can just come and select when an element is clicked, issues saving your app, whatever. Element is clicked, so we have our icon, microphone is clicked, and then the exact opposite condition is what we're going to apply here. So we have audio recorder A, then we have the recording status, and if it is no, then we want to start the recording. So we'll come to our element actions, start an audio recorder, and that's how we're going to start and stop this. Now, a couple things need to happen though, aside from just starting and stopping, because when we start, it records. When we stop, it is done recording and processes a file that then gets saved to Bubble as a URL. That URL is going to be our file path that we're going to pass to that API endpoint. Now, there is one more thing that we did not do when we stopped our recording, and that is save our file to Bubble. So if you come into step one, notice it says save to Bubble. We do want to check that because we're going to be looking for that in another condition for another workflow. Now, the file name, you can just call it audio, and you should be good to go with starting and stopping and saving that MP3 file. Now, let's make our new workflow. This new workflow is going to have another condition that's looking to see if that file has been saved, and if it has, then we're going to send that file to our endpoint and return the result on our page. So what we're looking for is general, and then we're going to select do when condition is true, meaning this will run when a certain condition is met. So let's go ahead and think about this condition. Well, we want it to trigger, of course, when the audio is not recording. If it's mid-recording, then obviously we don't have the file yet and we can't send anything to the endpoint. But if it is not recording and we have a valid file, then we want to send that to be transcribed via the Whisper endpoint. So the first thing we'll do is select our audio recorder A, and then we're looking for that recording status. So audio recorder A's recording status is no. It's not recording, so you either haven't started recording or you're done recording, and you should have that URL. But we're going to do another check to see if we have the URL. So we'll come to audio recorder A. So we'll select save to Bubble URL, and then we'll go ahead and select is not empty. So audio recorders A recording status is no, it's not recording, and we do have a Bubble URL that means we're going to perform this action. So the action is going to be, of course, our API call. So we'll just type in Whisper or whatever we called it, speech to text. So speech to text, then we have this dynamic link. And this is where we're going to put that file or URL. So get rid of that. We'll insert dynamic data. We'll select audio recorders A, save to bubble URL. And that is going to be the dynamic link. Now, one thing you need to know about this is, remember when we did images, it put the semicolon / instead of HTTPS, and we had to manually fix that. So after you've saved to bubble URL, then you can come down and find something called find and replace. Now here, you're going to be able to enter text that you want to look for and the text you want to replace it with. In our case, we're looking for those backslashes, and then we want to replace those backslashes with HTTPS semicolon // That way we have a valid URL we can actually send to OpenAI. We close that, we click off of it, it should highlight blue, which means we're good to go, and we can click off that. Now, the next thing we need to do is actually clear the audio. So you see right here, we have a clear audio recorder, meaning that we will start over or clear the data after it's been sent, allowing us to record another piece of audio or content. So once it's cleared, let's go ahead and display the result that we got from OpenAI. And how are we going to do that? Well, remember we made that state variable. We called it response, and we displayed it in that text box. Now we have to go and actually change that variable. Now remember, state variables are essentially just assigning a blank variable, or X, a value. And then that value will get displayed. So it can be changing, it is dynamic. Whatever we assign the state variable, whether it's dynamic or static, it will change based off the input. So if we come down to our element actions, we're gonna go ahead and select set a state. Then we can find that text or group A's response custom state, which we called response. And then the value we're gonna assign is actually a result of step 1, and then it's text. So great, we have our group A, we put that custom state response in there, and then we assign the value of whatever the text is that gets returned from OpenAI. Now let's close that, and really, we should be good to go. That is essentially all you need in order to do speech to text. Of course, you could add a bunch of extra things like changing the color when the icon's recording and when it's not, maybe popping up some random text that says recording in session, something like that. You can get creative, and all you need to do that is assign that state variable its value again, and then just do a conditional. When the state variable is X, we want to display Y. And that's how you got to think about that. So again, get creative if you want to add a bunch of extra stuff. We're just going with the basic functionality. Let's go with preview and see what happens. So we have our icon here. To actually get out of debug mode, press enter. Now we just have our icon here. So I'm going to click on the icon and record something, and then I'm going to click the icon again to pause recording, and then that should trigger that API to get called, send what I just recorded to the endpoint, and then it gets sent back as text, and hopefully, with our fingers crossed, it displays on the page. So let me click icon, I'll record something, and we'll have to allow the microphone. So it should be recording now. I like pizza, my favorite color is blue, it's a great day outside. And then I hit stop recording. It should send what I just recorded, and just like that, it displays the text, because I was talking in the middle. It says, so it should be recording now. I like pizza. My favorite color is blue. It's a great day outside. It's just so cool how accurate and fast that was. You'd think that might take a few minutes to load, but that was actually pretty quick, and that got me pretty excited to see that. So again, there's so many use cases that you could use this for, but you just have to be creative. Think about all the times you use voice and other applications, how they go about using it, when to use it. Siri is a great example of how it's used basically day to day, but you can do so much with audio. So just get creative with it. There's tons of stuff you can do, but that really wraps up some of the basic API endpoints OpenAI has to offer. The next thing we're going to be doing is training our model based on custom data and storing what we call embeddings and vectors in a vector database, and then asking ChatGPT or OpenAI a question, and it should be able to reference that knowledge base that we have stored and provide us custom answers that ChatGPT does not regularly have available to it. So again, super cool stuff, and all done with low to no code inside Bubble. So I'll see you in the next lesson.